Hi there. Welcome to Dear Franny podcast. I am your host, Francesca Hogi. And as always, I am very honored that you're taking some time to listen to the show today. So, on last week's episode, I started talking about authenticity and particularly in dating. And that's what I want to continue talking about tonight, or tonight because it's nighttime while I'm recording this. But so, last week I was talking about the importance of really understanding that we are all on a larger love journey, right? So, in the old paradigm, in the old way of approaching relationships, and when I say old, I mean, let's just say the last 100 years, right? So, over the last 100 years, that's where dating has become a thing. Like before 100 years ago, in, well, pretty much every place around the world, romantic relationships were much more about marriage and property and succession and having, furthering your lineage by having children. And, most people in the world did not have a situation where you got to look for the love of your life, right? It was, even if you were a king or a queen, and even sometimes even then there was more, there was less choice, right, in who you were partnering with. But relationships were much more societally dictated in terms of how they were supposed to look and who was supposed to be with who. And we had a lot more rules to follow, right? Like, so there was a lot more consensus about what it even meant to be in a romantic partnership. Now, around the beginning, well, actually, really at the end of the 1800s, the beginning of the 1900s, so the turn of the 20th century, we had an industrial revolution. And so we went from being farmers, and when I say we, I mean generally on Earth, on the planet, we went from being really very locally based because you lived in a community and you could live your whole life without ever leaving that community, without leaving that tribe, without leaving that village, without ever meeting anyone from a different social class, etc. And then we had this industrial revolution that happened. Bear with me on the history here, but it's important, I think, for context. And then suddenly you had people who were moving from their small towns. They were moving to cities to work in factories. And you had people now, young people living on their own versus before, especially young women would be living with their families until they got married and all of these things. So the whole world got upended when we started manufacturing things, not only because now we had widgets and the printing press and cars and, cereal and all the things that we came to manufacture. But it also really changed the way that we mate. So if you think about all of these young people, and there's a really great book if you want to learn more about this, it's called Labor of Love, The Invention of Dating, and the author's name is Maura Wengel, 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 and it's a really great book, and she talks about this. She talks about how all of these societal shifts that were really led by this industrial revolution led to the invention of dating. So it's an American invention. It really started happening in Chicago in the late 1800s, and then it's at first dating was something that lower class people did. So upper class people still had their courtship rituals. Who they married was still very much dictated by their community norms, by church, by family, by the monarchy, wherever depending on where you lived. But then by the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, dating starts to go mainstream. And so even people who are of, higher social classes, have more money, have more status, have more privilege, they also started to get into this quote unquote dating game. And then, we had the whole kind of quote unquote golden era of dating, which was, if you think about like the 50s, and the car and the invention of the car and the popularization of the car played a role in dating culture. And then it was about, if you were a girl, you wanted to be with a guy who had a car, and, the kind of car that he drove made a big deal. And, it was like all of these different kind of markers of status and desirability. And, women had to look a certain way and behave a certain way. And, marriage was very much the goal. And so this idea that you were, being your authentic self and meeting your soulmate, that was not the primary motivation, right? The primary motivation was to be with somebody who checked these societal boxes. Obviously, love played a part always in dating. Well, I shouldn't say always. Love. There were always some people who were always focused on love, and people who were always focused on that deep connection. But I'm talking about overall. The culture wasn't like, find your soulmate. It was like, get married. Don't, get married by a certain age, start having kids right away, have a house, have a car, have all these markers of success, right? And now here we are, fast forward to 2024, and we have seen the limits of that way of approaching dating and relationships. So now in this new era, we have much higher expectations of our romantic partners. We want them to be everything to us. We want, to have passionate love. We want to have financial stability. We want to be on the same page about family. We want to be on the same page about lifestyle. We want all of these things. And we also want to be best friends and all of these things, which make perfect sense that we want those things. However, if we really want those things, then we have to go deeper than looking at, okay, does somebody check these boxes on paper? Do they look a certain way? Do they present in a certain way? Do they seem to have a certain status? And if so, that's going to lead me to the happily ever after that I'm seeking. That mindset doesn't fit anymore. And so we can see that modern dating is in this crisis moment, with apps and all of this. And I don't want to repeat myself too much from last episode, but the point is that, we're at a moment now where a lot of people are feeling very confused about what relationships are supposed to look like, who they're supposed to be with, what compatibility really means. Now that breaking up and getting divorced has become very normalized, we have a whole, population of people who've had a lot of very deep relationships, long-term relationships, marriages, children, all these things, and are like, okay, that didn't work out. And now what? How do I move forward? How do I decide who is the right partner for me moving forward? And so we have all these questions about compatibility, but we tend to kind of still take that old thinking of the days where it's like, oh, this person has this job and drives this kind of car, therefore they're a catch, right? And I just want to be with them. Where a lot of people are taking that, they want the simplicity of that old thinking, but they want to put it on the complexity of modern love, dating, and relationships. And those two things are not compatible. So I want to take a step back and not be so focused on the other person, which is what we tend to really focus on, because again, that's the old thinking, that's the old mindset around love that we've all been conditioned with to some extent, and to bring it back to you, and to bring it back to your authentic self and what that actually even means, because the best way to actually determine whether or not you are compatible with another person is to be your authentic self, because then it will be evident. Do you like each other, right? Do you get along? Are you on the same page? Do you share the same values? Do you see the world in in compatible ways. They don't have to be identical ways, right? But they need to be compatible. Are you someone who values family over everything else? Are you someone who cares deeply about your career and the work that you do? Are you both, right? Do you believe in traditional roles in relationships? Or are you more flexible? Like there's all these different things that make up compatibility, particularly the values that if we were all just showing up authentically as ourselves, this wouldn't be such a question. So the reason that we tend to not show up authentically as ourselves is because we have a lot of scarcity thinking around relationships. And so it's like, well, there's, this person is a quote catch because they check all these boxes and there's not a lot of people who meet this criteria. So I need this to work out, right? That's like the attitude a lot of people are approaching their romantic relationships from that perspective. And so we see the limits of that. So authenticity, which I promised that really that's what I'm going to talk about today. And so there's layers of authenticity. And a lot of times when people talk about it, I think it's in a way that's maybe a little bit too generic. And people can say, okay, well, I am being authentic, but maybe not so much. So there's three levels of authenticity that I want to introduce you to, and I'm not saying I'm the first person who said this. I'm sure other people have said similar things, though this is a case of independent discovery, if that is the case, because I haven't looked into what other people have to say about this. This is just my own observation. So number one, the first level of authenticity is actually knowing who you are. So knowing your true self versus the conditioned self, right? So we all have been conditioned to think certain things and believe certain things about ourselves and about the world based on our upbringing and our families of origin and our communities and society at large. Whatever societies, whatever communities that we belong to, we are, and it's not all bad, right? Like this is literally how we learn about the world, is by these stories and these beliefs and these identities that are assigned to the people around us, that people assign to us. And, some of that might be really good, and some of that might be really aligned with who you truly are, and some of that might be very empowering. But there's also a lot of that tends to, because society is dysfunctional, because humans are, we're all just figuring this human thing out. It's not easy. We have a lot of things that we tend to believe about ourselves that are not actually true, right? So like, if you grew up in a household where, you were always told that you talk too much. And so maybe you've had this belief about yourself your whole life that you talk too much. And so you need to shut up because nobody cares about what you have to say, or you don't want to annoy people. And so you're used to holding back what you're really thinking. And maybe you've gotten so good at that you don't acknowledge how you really think or what you really believe or what you really feel. And maybe if your conditioning was such that you thought that the only way to be safe, and maybe in your actual situation it was the only way to physically actually be safe, was to go along with everything that everyone around you was saying, that is something to have a lot of compassion towards yourself for. And to give yourself a lot of love, right, to that part of yourself that thought that your own viewpoint wasn't valuable, wasn't worthy, etc. But understanding like, okay, how much of that am I still carrying with me, and how much of that am I now in my interactions with people? Am I just so used to saying what everybody else is saying, and because I think that's what's going to bring me love? How much am I holding back? How much am I, or was I told, maybe, you have the opposite. Some people are told to talk too much. Some people are saying, speak up, say something, have an opinion. Maybe you grew up in a household with very opinionated people, and, you felt like you also had to have an opinion about everything because that was the energy and that was the conditioning, and how you were brought up. So a lot of this and a lot of the ways in which we operate in the world, are not really true to ourselves. It's true to a story. Maybe it came out of trauma. Maybe it, wasn't like a necessarily a trauma, but just a way of doing things in whatever environment in which you were raised. And you might have to take some time to know who you truly are versus that conditioned self. Because when we talk about authenticity, a big part of that conversation tends to be speaking your mind, right? I keep it 100. Like there are a lot of people who say things like, "Oh well, I'm honest. I say it like it is. I say what I'm thinking. I say what's on my mind." Just because you're saying what's on your mind, just because you're giving your opinion, it doesn't actually mean that you're being authentic to your actual self. You could be authentic to a conditioned self that isn't actually a real reflection of you because you think that's how you're supposed to show up in the world. So I haven't brought it up this season, but if you've listened to the show, or you know me personally, if you worked with me, you take any of my courses or anything, you know that I am always beating the drum of self-compassion, right? Like this is, to me, the foundational self-love skill that is required to have a healthy, loving, kind relationship with yourself is to learn to be compassionate towards yourself. Because being human is hard. We are all doing the best that we can. We made a lot of decisions about ourselves, what we deserve, what is possible for us, what we're worthy of. We made a lot of those decisions from a very young age when we were trying to make sense of the world around us. And guess what? We got it wrong sometimes. So that's not our fault. And it's not about blaming anyone else. It's about understanding there is a bug in this program and I'm ready to debug the program and actually return to who I truly am. Because not only from a compatibility perspective, are you going to meet a better partner for you, the more you're able to be your true self, you're also just going to feel better because that's what you're here to be. You're here to be you, right? Like imagine if everyone said, okay, I'm going to go into the world and I'm just going to pretend to be someone else. I'm going to pretend to have different values, different opinions, a different personality, different interests. I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to hope that I meet a really great partner. Like, how would you even know that it doesn't compute, right? Like intuitively you understand that if you're pretending to be somebody that you're not going to meet the right person for you. So even though, we may not be fully deciding like I'm just going to be an imposter, I'm going to fully pretend to be someone else. We can still have these parts of ourselves that we are hiding away, that we're diminishing, that we're downplaying, that we don't want to look at it, we don't want to acknowledge it, and so we want to keep that from other people. So knowing your true self is the first part of it, but then giving yourself permission to be your true self and understanding that that is actually who you were meant to be. You were literally on this planet to be your true self and to feel the joy of that, the ease of that. Like that's the thing that you're an expert in, right? No matter the conditioning, underneath all of that, there is still your true self. So knowing your true self and giving yourself permission to show up with that North Star of who you really are is a level of authenticity that I think a lot of people skip, because they tend to focus on another level of authenticity, which is personality. So our personality is how we show up in the world, right? It's how we act. It's how we speak. It's it's the energy and the perspective that we bring to things. And again, your personality can be something that you have adapted because this is how you think you need to be in order to be loved, in order to be accepted, in order to be good enough. But your true personality might be very different. Your true personality might be very loving and very caring. And, you might be a total mushy love bug, but maybe you grew up in an environment where that was shamed out of you, or you were told that was weak, or you had experiences where that part of you was exploited, or you experienced a lot of pain, right? And so you shut that down. You're like, I'm not going to let people see that vulnerability within me. I'm not going to let myself get hurt that way ever again. That's a very understandable reaction. However, your true self is who you are. And a decision that you're not going to show it doesn't change that. So when you're not acting in alignment with who you really are, you are robbing yourself of being yourself. On a compatibility perspective, you are absolutely robbing yourself of finding the partners who are right for you. Because if you're really a love bug, then you want to be with another love bug. Okay. You don't want to be with somebody who, has also shut their hearts down, because that's only going to cause you more pain. So I know that, society gives us so many messages about what's acceptable, and it's easy to internalize those messages. But the freedom of actually letting yourself be yourself is its own reward. And that's also where you have the most power to manifest good things in your life. I remember one of the hardest times in my life, my first 2 years of college, not great. And my second year in particular, I really, for the first time, tried on being a different person. I was like, I didn't have that many friends. I had a couple of friends. I was in this weird antisocial phase, but the people that I was surrounding myself with in the kind of periphery were people who I felt that in order to be accepted by them, I needed to be different than I was. And so I tried on being different than I was, and, going along to fit in with them. And it was exhausting. It was so hard. It was so hard. And there was this guy who I was, fixated on. And I had convinced myself that I was like in love with this guy. And he was not interested in me. We did not have a romantic relationship. Okay. It was not, this was a one-sided situation. But I remember at one point we were at somebody's, student housing, whatever. And he and I wound up being alone together, not like in any intimate way, but just like we were in a room, like sitting on a sofa, like it was just the two of us. And it was so awkward. I was like, I have no idea what to say to this person, because I don't know I was so in my head about what I thought I needed to be for him to like me that I just was frozen. Like I was, and I remember after that incident having this realization of like, oh my God, like, thank God he doesn't like me, because if he did, like, what would I do? Like, that would be horrible. How would I spend time with this person? Like, what would I talk about? And it was like, it was a real like moment of clarity for me and moment of grace, because I was like, oh, wait, I actually have to be myself. Otherwise, like, this is going to be way, 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 way too hard. And I really gave myself that permission at that time. And I never had the problem of not knowing what to say ever again. Because my true self really is a chatterbox. Okay, so knowing who you are and giving yourself permission to be that true self, right? And that also includes like how you're showing up, right? What that personality is, like that persona that you're embodying. And then the third level is your actions, right? So I think this is a place where a lot of us who we know our true selves, we know our true personality, but we maybe are able to rationalize doing things that are not in alignment with that truth. And because we live in a world. I mean, it could be anything from, the kind of work that you would really love to do, but you do a different job because you think that's what you need to do. Or that's what has brought you success, or that's what's brought you money, or that's what's brought you status. And so, the action there is to do work that is is not aligned with who you really are, and you know that you're doing it, but that's a conscious trade-off. And I'm not saying, by the way, I know it is a privileged place to say, like, oh, you should only do what feels totally right for you, right? Because sometimes in life we do need to do things because that's the situation and you need to get through it, and that's where you are right now. And I certainly have been in many circumstances like that in my life. But the point is, that's just one example, right? Going back to dating, how often are you going along with something that doesn't actually feel good to you? How often are you dating people or giving energy to people who aren't truly valuing you? And your true self wants to be loved and wants to give love, right? You want to give and receive love. You don't want to be giving love and not getting anything in return. But our actions can sometimes contradict that, because we're not just seeing ourselves from this conditioning, but we're also behaving from this conditioning, right? So there are lots of layers of which we can examine, like, okay, am I actually acting in alignment? And all of this comes back to really understanding that the quality of your life and the quality of the relationships that you have, and certainly your romantic relationships, is going to be a reflection of your relationship with yourself. So the more that you're able to see yourself, the more that you're able to accept yourself, the more that you're able to love yourself through compassion, through taking high self-worth actions, even when you don't feel like it, right? Understanding that love is a verb. It's something that you do. Like, so that when it comes to self-love, we're not just waiting to wake up one day and magically feel all of these amazing feelings about ourselves, but understanding that, oh, I actually have a responsibility for fostering those feelings within myself through action, right? Through removing all the ways in which I'm treating myself in an unloving way, and looking to yourself as your own North Star, as your own compass, to understand what you actually need, and then start to give yourself that permission to give yourself that what you need, right? Starting with that compassion, starting with that encouragement, starting with that kindness, starting with that self-validation, like giving yourself credit for all of the hard things that you've done and all that you've been through. Like, there's so many ways in which we leave love on the table because we're not even giving ourselves that love. So when it comes to determining your compatibility with someone else, you don't have to be perfect in anything ever, thankfully. That's not required. But the more you can move in the direction of knowing yourself, honoring yourself, treating yourself with love, then when you meet other people, it's going to be real clear. It's like, well, this person doesn't treat me as well as I treat myself, so I'm not even interested in them romantically, right? Or, wow, this person can actually see me for who I am. I can see that, I can feel, not just see, I can feel. They're not just projecting ideas onto me of who they think I am or who they think I should be. They actually are hearing me. They're actually seeing me for who I truly am. And I see me for who I truly am. And that's why I can recognize it. And that's why I can appreciate it. And that's why I can see that there's a beautiful connection here. Doesn't mean they're necessarily your person, but my point is, the more skilled we are at giving ourselves the gift of this awareness and of living as our true selves, the more clarity we're going to have with everything in our lives, and particularly when it comes to dating and when it comes to relationships. And that is what I want for all of you. If you are listening to this, I want you to have that clarity. I want you to have that peace. I want you to take away the burden and the stress of trying to be someone that you're not, and just giving yourself the gift of being who you are, because that is what makes, that's the magic. Your magic is in your true self. And that's how you're going to recognize the people who are right for you. And also how you're going to recognize the people who are able to be their true selves, right? So that's when the energy of who you're attracted to, of who's attracted to you really gets good, right? You really start to get in that flow because, the person who sees themselves can also recognize when other people see themselves. And that's so magnetic. And that's the start of something so beautiful. But before you even get there, it's such a gift and it's so beautiful and it's so exciting to feel that recognition on your own within yourself and then just let it be amplified by the relationships that you have. So that's what I wanted to say today. And I hope that all makes sense. And yeah, let me know what you think of this episode. As always, I so appreciate when you, not only that you listen to the show, but when you share the show, when you let me know what you think of it, when you rate and review the show. Thank you so much for all of our 5-star ratings and reviews. It means so much to me. And yeah, thank you. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. I am at Dear Franny on all the places, on Instagram, on Threads, on LinkedIn, on I don't know where else, but everywhere. Yeah, I would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your week wherever you are in the world. And I will be back with another episode. Till then, take great care of yourself. Bye.